Hi there and good evening. I'm Patrick Falk in Hong Kong. You're watching ViuTV News. Coming up, no room for compromise. That's Chief Executive Carrie Lam's response to a pan-Democrat wish list, which includes a request to waive legal fees for the 4 unseated oath takers. But Lam does promise some more funding for public hospitals to cope with a surge in patients this flu season. Elsewhere, US President Donald Trump's ailing healthcare bill takes a second knocking after 2 Senate conservatives announced they won't support it. All right, first up, Chief Executive Carrie Lam refused to give her word that she'll call 2 rounds of LegCo by-elections. The request was made by some pan-Democrats after 4 lawmakers were unseated by the High Court over their botched oaths. They also asked to waive their legal fees and repay their salaries. But Lam says she can't override legal proceedings and there's no room for compromise. She has, however, ruled out introducing national security legislation, known as Article 23, or relaunching the political reform process before the by-elections. She also urged legislators to help pass her $3.6 billion education funding request in tomorrow's Finance Committee meeting.
I'm not here as a chief executive to just deal with the pan-democratic members. I have 7.3 million people to whom I have to be accountable for my decisions and actions. I have absolutely no right in determining the changes to the rules of procedures of the Legislative Council or this sort of asking the Legislative Council members to repay the Legislative Council on their salaries and operating expenses.
Well, separately, Lam has promised more funding for public hospitals to cope with the surge in patients during this year's peak summer flu season. This comes after the Hospital Authority announced a series of measures yesterday to deal with mounting pressure on the city's clinics. That includes sending doctors from the Department of Health who are admin work to work at public hospitals during their out-of-office hours. But some doctors worry they may not have enough experience to provide emergency medical treatments. Speaking ahead of the Executive Council meeting, the Chief Executive stressed that the overcrowding situation must be resolved.
Hospital overcrowding is unfavorable. This should not continue. Experts can't tell us when the flu season will end. So after paying a visit to a hospital on Sunday, I have already asked the Health Minister, the head of Hospital Authority and other organizations to discuss possible solutions. If they need more funding, no problem. The government will meet their demands.
Well, it was hard not to notice another day of downpours in the city, turning into flooding in some areas in the New Territories. Tai Po, Sha Tin and Sai Kung saw more than 70 millimetres of rain. Torrents of water could be seen inundating roads in Tai Po, flooding a number of homes and restaurants as well. Firefighters were deployed to evacuate several residents from Ting Kok village who were trapped by knee-deep pools of water. The Hong Kong Observatory says more rain is on the way. The city's ombudsman has ruled out carrying out an investigation on election laptops during the chief executive election in March. The 2 laptops containing personal information on all voters in Hong Kong were stolen from Asia World Expo, the backup venue for the CE poll. Speaking to the press, Ombudsman Connie Lau said government departments have already released 3 reports and suggested how they can prevent it from happening again. She slammed the Registration and Electoral Office for being careless, questioning why its officers put the laptops in a room without proper security in the first place.
Some people raise about that their individual information could be retrieved from the system, but nobody is going to follow up. Not to mention that the issue is discussed or held discussion on whether how to make sure that the personal data security could be kept.
Turning overseas now, the US Senate's healthcare overhaul appears to be in serious trouble after 2 more Republicans say they oppose a revised version of the bill. Republican Senators Jerry Moran and Mike Lee pledged to vote against the GOP healthcare bill, which would essentially kill the plan. Moran says it fails to repeal the Affordable Care Act, known also as Obamacare, while Lee says it doesn't go far enough in lowering premiums for middle-class families. The 2 senators breaking with their party means the latest version of the legislation is well short of the support it needs to pass. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump admits he needs all the help he can get, including that of Senator John McCain, who's on sick leave.
We hope John McCain gets better very soon, because we miss him. He's a crusty voice in Washington. Plus, we need his vote. He'll be back soon. But we need that vote, and we need a number of votes because we do have to repeal Obamacare, and we will end up replacing it with something that is going to be outstanding, far, far better than failing Obamacare, where premiums have gone up in some cases over 200% this year.
And staying in the US, where the probe into the fatal shooting of an Australian woman over the weekend by Minneapolis police, who she called to report a strange noise behind her home, has now turned to why the officers' body cameras were not turned on at the time of the incident. Zach Goldman reports.
Memorials written in chalk and a demand for answers in Minneapolis on Monday, where investigators are trying to understand what led a police officer to shoot and kill an unarmed woman over the weekend. Police on Saturday night responded to a 911 call of a possible assault. After cops arrived on the scene, one of them fired their weapon, killing Justine Damond. Damond, an Australian citizen living in the U.S., she owned a meditation and life coaching business and was engaged to marry an American. Investigators say the officers' body cameras were not turned on. The mayor on Sunday seeking answers as to why.
I share the same questions other people have about why we don't have body cam footage of it, and I hope to get answers to that in the days coming. You know, I'm deeply disturbed by the whole incident.
The Minneapolis Star-Tribune citing 3 unnamed sources that 2 officers in one squad car responded to the 911 call. They encountered Damond in an alley. Damond was wearing pajamas and speaking to the driver when the officer in the passenger seat fired his gun through the driver's side door. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, visiting Minnesota Monday for a national meeting of state prosecutors, did not specifically address the shooting, but said this.
We will aggressively prosecute federal or state officers who violate civil rights of our citizens. That can never be accepted. But we will take care to never demean or offer unwarranted criticism of the honorable, brave, and professional law enforcement officers who protect us every day.
Local media quoting police reporting the officers who responded to the 911 call have been placed on administrative leave.
Meanwhile, the United States has threatened sanctions against Venezuela as President Nicolas Maduro continues to insist on creating a super legislature despite opponents voting down his plans in an unofficial referendum. Around 98% rejected Maduro's plan, which would give him the power to rewrite the constitution and annul the opposition-led legislature. The president dismissed the poll as unconstitutional and is campaigning for a July 30th vote to form the super body. US President Donald Trump has now waded in, saying if Maduro pushes ahead, the states will take strong and swift economic action against the OPEC nation. Maduro's opponents stressed they've not given up their fight against the country's leader.
We call on the entire country this Thursday to hold a massive protest and without violence. A national civil strike for 24 hours as a mechanism of pressure and preparation in leading up to next week, and to challenge constituent fraud and manifest a restoration of constitutional order.
OK, coming a bit closer to home now, to Thailand, where ousted Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra will face a court ruling in 2 weeks' time over the launch of an extravagant rice subsidy program during her time in office. Samantha Vardas reports.
It was the election platform that swept Thailand's Yingluck Shinawatra to power in 2011, an extravagant subsidy scheme for rice meant to help the country's farmers make more money. But instead, it led to her removal from power just days before the 2014 military coup and made her the subject of a criminal trial. Now, as her 2-year case comes to an end this week, many in the country's rural northeast are watching closely. Reuters' Panu Wongcham explains why.
Majority of the farmers that I have spoken to say that the rice subsidy scheme introduced by the Yingluck government have really lifted them economically. They said in the past they earned only enough money just to reinvest in their farming. But under the Yingluck scheme, they say that they began to have savings. They can start using money on different things beyond just farming itself.
It's easy to see why that won her support. Yingluck offered to buy rice from farmers at up to 50% above market prices. That allegedly cost the state billions of dollars and distorted global prices. She faces up to 10 years in jail if found guilty of failing to stem the losses.
For her hardcore supporters, the case represents a personal attack by the military government on the former Prime Minister and an attack, political one, against the Pheu Thai party overall. They say that they fear any negative consequence of the case would prevent future governments from creating agricultural subsidy schemes that would really benefit them.
Though banned from politics, Yingluck still remains the unofficial face of her party, even touring Thailand extensively last year to meet her supporters in the rice fields. Her last hearing will be in a Bangkok court on Friday, with a verdict expected to be announced in the coming weeks.
Chaos in Taiwan's parliament continues to unfold. From throwing punches to hurling chairs, legislators have been using all sorts of ways to express their feelings over a controversial infrastructure project. Members from both the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the opposition Kuomintang were seen shoving and throwing water at each other earlier today. KMT lawmakers are trying to block a massive funding request to build light rail infrastructure throughout the island. They claim the project favours counties siding with the ruling party. All right, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. OK, we begin with local market action, and Hong Kong stocks advanced for a 7th straight session of gains on Tuesday. The Hang Seng Index was in negative territory for much of the afternoon session, but some late buying saw it finish 2/10